So when your nervous system is going to receive stimulus from your sense organs, it is going to convert that stimulus into impulses, and those impulses are going to be transformed into messages and are going to be sent to the effectors, that are your muscles and your glands, which are going to act accordingly. So this very coordinated nervous system is mainly made up of nervous tissue, and this nervous tissue has three main components. One is the neuron, other we have the nerve fibers, and thirdly we have neuroglia, right. The first component, that is a neuron, it is a nerve cell, right. This neuron is the main unit of nervous system. Neuron is the main unit of nervous system. Now it has three main parts. We have cyton, which is the cell body. We have dendrites, these are the branches which arise from cyton, right. Then we have axon. Axon is the long process that arises from cyton again, right. So when you look at this diagram, this is the cell body, these are the dendrites, they are going to bring impulses, right, to the cyton, they are going to bring impulses to the cyton, and this is the axon which is originating from this cyton, the cell body. So we have three main parts, we have the cell body, that is cyton, we have dendrites, right, these projections, and then we have this long process that we call as axon. We have a long process that we call as axon. Now when you look at this neuron, we can actually make out that the central, this cell body, that is cyton, has many organelles, right. You can see that it has a nucleus, it has a nucleolus, right, and cyton is the cell body which is also known as perikaryon. It is also known as perikaryon. It has a simple cell membrane. Look at it, it has a simple cell membrane, and the cytoplasm of the cell body is known as neuroplasm. It is known as neuroplasm, and you can see that it has nucleus and nucleoplasm in it, and it has all the organelles except for one organelle. It does not has a centrosome. So centrosome is absent in the cell body of the neuron, and in the cytoplasm that we call as neuroplasm, it has neurofibrils and nissl bodies. It has neurofibrils and nissl bodies. These nissl bodies are the small fragments of the endoplasmic reticulum which contains ribosomes, right. So these nissl bodies are the small fragments of endoplasmic reticulum that contain ribosomes. After cyton, we can discuss these dendrites, right. So what are these dendrites? They are one to many highly branched small projections, and they are going to send impulses towards cyton. So impulses are going to be sent towards cyton by these dendrites, right. So the impulses are going to reach the cyton by these dendrites. That is why we call the dendrites as efferent processes. Remember, A comes first in the alphabetical order, right. So first of all, impulses are going to reach the cyton, that is the cell body. So dendrites are also known as efferent processes. Then we have the axon, right. We have axon. This axon is one very long process from cyton. It can be microscopic to 1 meter in length, and it terminates as highly branched filaments. Now it is going to terminate here, and here branching occurs. There are terminal branches over here, right. So axon ends up in the form of terminal branches, and it carries impulses from the cyton to what? From the cyton to the next neuron, right. So this is also known as efferent processes. It is also known as efferent processes. Why? Because just remember that the dendrites, they are going to carry impulses towards cyton, and these axons, it's the branches, they are going, these axons which terminate into highly branched filaments, they are going to carry impulses from the cyton, right. So they are the efferent processes starting from E. So you can just remember that A, as it comes first, then E comes after A, right. So this is one way you can remember this, how these impulses are carried from the dendrite to the cyton and cyton to the axon, right. So, the axon is also known as neuraxis. It is also known as neuraxis, right. So, this is about the neuron, the basic unit of your nervous tissue. So, you can just see axon, the impulse is generated and this is the conducting region, right. So, this is how the impulse is carried forward, right, and here the axon terminates into many branched filaments, right. Now, what happens? Here when the axon terminates here, the dendrites of the next nerve cell, of the next neuron, they are present, but there is no physical contact. There is no physical contact, there is always some gap, and that presence of next neuron with some small gap, that small gap is known as synaptic cleft. It is known as synaptic cleft, and you also call it as synapse, right. So, when there is the ending of the axon by this branch filaments, there is the presence of the linkage of one more neuron. What will be there? There will be these dendrites, but these dendrites are not physically in contact, in touch with these filaments, right, but there is some gap. That gap is known as synaptic cleft. It is known as synaptic cleft, right. Now, when we talk about neurons, there are three types of neurons. We have three types of neurons. First of all, we have sensory neurons, then we have motor neurons, and then we have associated neurons. Sensory neurons are the neurons which bring impulses from the sensory organs to the brain. Sensory neurons are the neurons which bring nerve impulses from sensory organs to the brain. So, you can also call it as efferent neurons, because first of all, what is going to happen? Stimulus is going to be perceived by the sense organs. So, first of all, stimulus will be generated by the sense organs, and in the form of impulse it is going to be sent to the brain by sensory neurons, which we also call as efferent neurons. Remember, A comes first, right. Then we have motor neurons. These neurons are going to send the messages from the brain to the effectors. What are the effectors? The muscles and the glands, which are going to act accordingly, right. So, they are also known as efferent neurons, starting from E, efferent neurons, right. Then the associated neurons, they form a connection between the sensory and the motor neurons. They actually are also known as relay neurons. They are also known as relay neurons. They form a link between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. So, these are the three types of neurons: sensory, motor and relay neurons. And sensory are also known as efferent neurons. Motor neurons are also known as efferent neurons, and relay neurons are also known as associated neurons, right. Next important part of a nervous tissue are the nerve fibers. They are the nerve fibers. So, nerve fibers are actually the axon which is covered with one or more sheaths. The axon which is covered with one or more sheath. So, depending upon the number of sheaths, nerve fibers are actually divided into two categories. We have medulated or myelinated nerve fibers, and we have non-medulated or non-myelinated nerve fibers. So, when you look at the diagrams, you will see that the medulated nerve fibers, they have what? They have two sheaths. The inner sheath is medullary or myelin, and the outer sheath is neurolemma, right. So, you will see that the inner sheath is known as myelin sheath and the outer sheath is known as neurolemma. So, medulated nerve fiber, it actually has two sheaths. Then we have non-medulated or non-myelinated nerve fiber. It has one sheath that we call as neurolemma. It has only one outer sheath, that is neurolemma. So, myelin sheath is absent in this case. Myelin sheath is absent in this case. Now, in case of the medulated nerve fiber, you will see that the sheath is not continuous. There are many constrictions over here, and these constrictions are known as node of Ranvier. So, it is not just continuous, it has constrictions. You can look at these constrictions, and these constrictions are known as node of Ranvier, right. Then the next component of the nervous tissue is the neuroglia. It is the neuroglia. They are the packaging cells of nervous tissue present in between the neurons. So, in between the neurons, we have the packaging cells that we call as neuroglia, So, we have discussed the three components of nervous tissue, the neuron, which is a very important unit of nervous system. Then we have discussed nerve fibers. We have two types of nerve fibers. Nerve fibers are what? They are the axons which have one or more sheaths. Then we have neuroglia. These are the packaging cells that are present in between the neurons. Then what are nerves? Nerves are, the collection of the nerve fibers which are covered by some sheath again, right. So, what are nerves? Nerves are the collection of these nerve fibers which are covered by some connecting sheath, and they arise from the brain and the spinal cord, and they connect to your all body parts. So, this is what do we call as nerves actually, right. You must have heard about this word nerves. So, what are these nerves? They are the collection of nerve fibers covered by some sheath, and they arise from brain and the spinal cord, and they connect many body parts. So, I hope that nervous tissue, which is composed of neuron, which is composed of nerve fibers and neuroglia, it is now clear to you.